glad you decided to join us tonight for our family literacy night. I'm excited to share a book with you. But first I want to show you something. I'm going to show you a tool that I use sometimes during Christmas time or sometimes during the year when I want to have a nut that's in a shell. This is called a Nutcracker. It squeezes like this. I'm going to show you how to crack a nut in the Nutcracker. So this right here is a walnut. Sometimes they're really hard. This one feels like it's really hard. Let me see. I might want to do this one because I have to squeeze really hard to get my nut out. There's some ridges in here too so that it holds the nut in place. But these are kind of hard. They're really big and you have to squeeze hard. So this opens the nut because not all of our nuts come shelled for us. Sometimes they come in the shell and we have to get it out of the nut or out of the shell. So I'm going to try and squeeze this one. Let's see. Did you hear that? It cracked. There it is. I got my nut out of the shell. This is called a walnut. Here's my walnut. Nuts taste the best after they come out of the shell. It doesn't taste as good when they've been shelled for us. They're very fresh. All right, I'm going to also show you my decorative Nutcracker. This I bring out at Christmas time. A long time ago, Nutcrackers like this would also crack nuts. You could open its mouth and put a nut in there and crack it. Now this is just a decoration. I'd probably break it if I tried to crack a nut. And then this one right here, this little Nutcracker here is helping me this year. He's helping me count down the days till Christmas. Right now we have 23 more days till Christmas. And then tomorrow when I get up, I'm going to change it and it'll be 22 days till Christmas. This is very helpful because that way I know when Christmas Day arrives and I'm so excited. So the book I'm going to read to you today is called The Nutcracker. And after we're done reading this book, we're going to do an activity. This is what our activity looks like. We're going to paint the background and then you have a baggie with some felt pieces in it. And you and your parent are going to put together your own Nutcracker. It's kind of like a puzzle, right? So you are going to build your own Nutcracker and you're going to glue it to the canvas that you painted. And you can have this forever and ever. And you can write the date on it, 2020. I wrote 2020 on here. So every time I pull this out at Christmas time, I can have the memory of how I got this and how I created it with my parent, right? All right, so now we get to read the book. I'm so excited. Nutcracker is my favorite book. I have probably 10 versions of the Nutcracker, and this is one of the newest ones I collected because this one is a special one because it's actually put out by the New York City Ballet. The Nutcracker is a ballet. It's performed around Christmas time every year, and so now I'm ready to share my book with you, The Nutcracker. This book is very special. I have like probably 10 versions of the Nutcracker, and this is my newest one. I just got this one this year. This was put out by the New York City Ballet, and the reason why they put out a book about the Nutcracker is because they perform the Nutcracker every year at Christmas time. So I'm going to share this with you. Look, it looks like she's dancing, doesn't it? Let's open it up and see what's on the inside. Here is the Nutcracker. And there's two little children. They're peeking in a big, huge door. I wonder what they're looking for inside there. I think we'll find out when we start reading it, right? The Nutcracker. It was Christmas Eve at the Stahlbaum's house, and like children everywhere, Marie and Fritz were so excited that they could feel their toes tingle. When you get excited, your whole body just feels like energized, right? And you might have some tingly toes. Their parents were decorating the Christmas tree before the big holiday party, and Marie and Fritz were not allowed into the great room until it was done. They jostled each other to sneak a peek at the glittering tree through the keyhole. That must be what they're doing right here. They're looking through the keyhole to see the glittering tree because they were not allowed in there. At last the guests arrived and the doors were thrown open. "Let the party begin!" everyone cried as they joyfully filled the festive room. It does look very festive, doesn't it? They look very happy. The children danced and played, and everyone was merry until, oh no, the lights flickered and the room grew dark. A mysterious man with a young boy entered from the shadows. The man was dressed all in black with a huge fluttering cape. The children scurried to hide behind their parents as he paused and flung back his cape over his shoulder. Ah, there was nothing to fear. It was just Herr Drosselmeyer, Marie's beloved godfather. Marie flew into his arms for a hug and shyly met his young nephew. He's meeting his nephew. It was nothing to be afraid of. It was just her godfather. Herr Drosselmeyer was a toy inventor, and a visit from him was always full of surprises. The curious children, their eyes full of wonder, gathered around 3 huge boxes he had brought with him. Suddenly, the boxes sprang open and out leapt one life-size doll, and then another, and then another. The dolls danced for the delighted crowd. As the celebration continued, Herr Drosselmeyer beckoned to Marie. He had a special gift for her, a nutcracker. The nutcracker was dressed as a handsome soldier with a white beard. Herr Drosselmeyer showed Marie how the nutcracker could open and snap his mouth to crack nuts for everyone. Crack, crack. Remember I told you the nutcrackers, they used to crack nuts, right? That must be a lot of fun to do. Marie was enjoying cracking nuts and passing them out to the children when suddenly jealous Fritz swooped in and snatched the nutcracker from her. He swung it around the room and smashed it down onto the floor with a loud bang. Marie burst into tears. Her beloved nutcracker was broken. But Herr Drosselmeyer knew just how to fix the nutcracker. He tied a scarf around the nutcracker's head like a bandage and handed him back to Marie, who cradled him in her arms. Remember, Herr Drosselmeyer was the toy maker. He probably made the nutcracker, so he knew how to fix it. When Herr Drosselmeyer's nephew gave Marie a tiny bed that was the perfect size for her nutcracker, and Marie nestled him in to rest. The party was coming to a close, and everyone joined for one last grand dance. When the music ended, the guests bundled up and made their way out into the frosty night air. Marie waved goodbye to her dear godfather and his handsome nephew. It had been a long evening, and it was time for bed. During the night, Marie awoke, remembering that the nutcracker was alone downstairs in his bed. She ran down to scoop him up. With the nutcracker safely in her arms, she curled up on the sofa and drifted back to sleep in the soft glow of the Christmas tree. She hadn't been asleep for long when Herr Drosselmeyer slipped back into the house to properly mend the nutcracker. He gently slid him out of Marie's arms, repaired him under the light of the moon, and disappeared into the darkness. But then, strange things began to happen. At the stroke of midnight, Marie was pulled from her sleep by the clock chimes. She rubbed her eyes in surprise. Great big mice appeared from the shadows and began to scurry across the room. The mice are looking at Marie. With a rumble and a shake, the tree began to grow before her eyes. The lights were flashing brightly as it rose higher and higher and higher. Marie had never seen anything so big. Do you see how big the tree grew? The illustrator of this book decided to show us how big it grew by one, we hold it this way, and then to make it bigger, we have to turn it this way to read it, and it shows us how big the tree grew. Then Fritz's toy soldiers sprang to life. They marched into a battle with the mice. The mice were led by the fierce and terrible Mouse King, who wore a shiny crown on his head. Then the Nutcracker himself came to life, growing until he was the size of Marie. He was not little anymore. He got big like Marie. His bed, now huge, spun around and around. The Nutcracker leapt out of the bed and led the battle against the mice. The Mouse King towered over the Nutcracker, taunting him. With quick thinking, Marie threw her slipper and it landed on the king's head. He turned to look away and the Nutcracker toppled over him. The Nutcracker triumphantly claimed the Mouse King's crown in victory. Triumphantly, he was the winner of the fight. In that moment, the ancient spell that had been cast on the Nutcracker was broken. He transformed into a handsome prince who looked very much like Herr Drosselmeyer's nephew. Oh, he transformed. Someone had cast an evil spell on him. There was a movie or another book that happened in. It was called Beauty and the Beast. Do you remember? He had a spell cast over him and he turned into the beast, but he was actually a prince. It seems like that's kind of like what's going on in this story too. The prince gallantly placed the crown on top of Marie's head and led her by the hand into the starry night, beyond her house and deep into the forest toward the Christmas star. Snow began to fall and the glistening flakes began to dance. They're dancing. This is a ballet, remember? This is the dance of the snowflakes. We had kind of an intermission there, didn't we? And an intermission is when they stop the performance. They do that at the ballet and big shows like that so that you can get up and stretch. So maybe you got up and stretched a little bit. I don't know. If you didn't, maybe we can do that now before we get started. That way we're not sitting too long. Maybe you can wiggle a little bit. I have bells on my vest today. The prince took Marie on a fantastic journey. They boarded a cozy walnut boat that sailed into the night, soon landing in an enchanted kingdom called the Land of Sweets. They used a walnut boat just like our shell, right? The Land of Sweets was a magical place filled with candy dripping in icing and magnificent, delicious colors as far as the eye could see. News of their arrival traveled fast, and Marie and the prince were greeted by the Sugar Plum Fairy, who reigned over the land. She welcomed them with a curtsy, and with a wave of her sparkly wand, a host of delights from her kingdom appeared before them. The prince told the story of their great battle with the Mouse King. "Oh, you are both very brave," the Sugar Plum Fairy said. Then she invited them to celebrate by settling in 2 magnificent candy thrones with big bowls of chocolate, cake, and ice cream set before them. The Sugar Plum Fairy summoned everyone in the Land of Sweets to dance for the Prince and Marie in honor of their victory. First, there was a delightful dance of spicy Spanish hot chocolate, heralded by the call of trumpets and snapping fingers. Next came the mysterious Arabian coffee dance that ended with the twinkling of tiny cymbals, giving way to the explosive leaps and turns of Chinese tea. The jumping candy canes emerged next, leaping high into the air and dancing through hoops. What could come after candy canes? Marzipan shepherdesses stepped out, tiptoeing delicately while playing their flutes. The biggest surprise of all was the gigantic Mother Ginger, who swaggered before them. All of a sudden, 8 tiny clowns called Ponchinelles sprang out from beneath her skirt and danced in the rhythm of her tambourine. As Mother Ginger scooted her children off, a garden of flowers appeared amid the blooms of the shimmering dewdrop fairy. With each step, she brought every single petal to life in blossoming swirls of pink. Finally, the regal Sugar Plum Fairy returned with her noble cavalier. They floated gracefully about, and then she spun faster and faster before leaping into his arms. It was all so deliciously marvelous. Deliciously marvelous. You should watch the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. That's my favorite. With another wave of her wand, the Sugar Plum Fairy summoned her whole kingdom for a joyous farewell celebration. It does look very joyous. They look very happy. As much as they wanted to stay, it was time for Marie and the prince to leave the Land of Sweets and return to their families. As the lovely soft snow continued to fall, they climbed into a beautiful sleigh pulled by magical reindeer. Marie and the prince turned to wave goodbye to their new friends as they rose higher and higher into the sky, away from their sweet celebration and into the starry night. That is the end of our Nutcracker story. I hope you enjoyed this version of the Nutcracker.